The brush tool is very important, and by the time you're done with this lecture, you'll know how to use it to apply adjustments locally. So let's get started. What do local adjustments mean? Well, you see in every tool that we did that used adjustments before this, so for example, this edit dialog box, if I adjusted the exposure in this slider, it affected it for the entire image. Well, if I select the brush tool, I can now, and I'll just show you, click and drag across part of the image and then go down to exposure, and I can slide right or left to increase or decrease the exposure of just this area that I painted on. You can see that if I hover over the blue dot, that I'll see a red mask for where I've painted on, and if I click on it, I can also backspace to delete it. So I can make any of these adjustments you see in the slider, and I'll just click to collapse the brush tool here so you can see more of the adjustments for the sliders. I can make any of these adjustments locally now, and that's pretty amazing. Let's go through the adjustments one by one after I've reset them here, and I'll explain what they are. First, temp, shown here. On the left is blue, on the right is yellow. Temp adjusts the color temperature of your image, making it warmer or cooler. Warmer, of course, is more yellow. Cooler is bluer. A graduated filter temperature effect can improve images captured in mixed lighting conditions. So, for example, sunlights, sunsets, shade, and direct sun may benefit from temperature adjustments locally. And don't worry, after we've gone through all of these tools on the right, we'll actually jump into this image and use it so you can see how it actually is applied. But it's important that I think you know all the adjustments and what they do first. Tint, the next one below temp. On the left is green, on the right is magenta. It compensates for a green or a magenta tone in your images. This can be, say, if you're taking a portrait of someone who's laying on top of the grass. Many times their face will have a bit of a green tint, and maybe you can adjust that and get it to have a more natural skin tone with a local adjustment to adjust the tint. Below that is exposure. Obviously, this sets the image brightness and can be thought of in terms of dodging and burning or lightening and darkening in, say, Photoshop or other tools that have that dodge and burn. But exposure, slide to the right, it makes the image brighter. To the left, makes it darker. Contrast. Contrast is a tool that adjusts image contrast, which means that the difference between the highlights and the shadows is greater, or that it brings out more edges within your image by increasing the contrast, and it flattens the image or makes the edges look less pronounced, softer edges if you decrease contrast. Highlights. Highlights recovers the detail in overexposed areas of an image if you bring the highlights down. Highlights are the brightest area of an image. Shadows, this slider allows you to recover the detail in underexposed shadow or dark areas of your image and can be used in case you've improperly or underexposed certain very shady parts of the image. White. White adjusts the white point in the photo and can be used in order to adjust sort of the midsection of the brights of an image. Black. Black adjusts the black points in a photo and can be thought of as an adjustment just short of shadow, so a little bit brighter than shadows. Clarity. It adds depth to an image, and it does so by boosting your contrast. So when you boost clarity, you are also kind of boosting contrast in a more refined way. Dehazing. It reduces existing haze in a photo. So let's say you take a landscape photo that has a lot of distance throughout the image in the foreground and background. Dehazing will remove that haze from the image so that you have more contrast, and again, you bring out the edges of the image. Saturation. Saturation adds vividness to the color so that all your colors become more vivid, alive, stronger, you could think of colors. Sharpness will bring out the edges and edge definition similar to increasing contrast, but it does this in a slightly more subtle way that really looks at only increasing the edges for sharpness in an image. Noise reduces luminant noise, which is usually found in lower light conditions and in shadows. The moire removes moire effects or color aliasing. Sometimes when you look at an edge of an image, you might see instead of a just a black edge to a line. Maybe there's some black and then blue or black and magenta there at the edge, and that's moire. Those are the adjustments you can make with the brush tool. I know that was a lot, and I hope that was helpful, but there's even more. You see, if I click on this arrow here that's just above size and under brush, I have a dialog box similar to the others that we've opened before. I bet you can guess what size is. Size simply adjusts the brush size that you're working with to paint over larger areas or smaller areas with your brush. On the left is 0.1, on the right is 100. Below that is feather. Let's see, I'll get myself a decent sized brush, about 13.9 there. And 100% feather means it's going to have very soft and gradual transitions. It's the difference between the two circles, and if I slide to the left, you can see the difference between the two circles goes to 0, meaning it'll be a very hard image with hard transitions. Flow controls the rate of application of adjustment. I normally set flow to 100, which means that one paint applies all of the adjustment. Density controls the amount of transparency in the stroke. And that might be a little confusing, but I think if you play with density, you'll see how flow and density work together in order to give you more control over the adjustments that you make. Okay, enough of what all the adjustments are and how to use the brush. Let's jump into the image now and make some adjustments, shall we? What I want to do is I want to make this center section where there seems to be a bit of light that comes down anyway from the light bulb that we've removed. We're going to make that brighter just to see what it looks like. So we'll start off by adjusting our brush properly. I'd like our brush to be up 20. We're going to use 20.1 in this case. I'd like a big feather though, so I'm going to go to 84. Looks fine. I'll set my flow and my density to 100. Now what I can do, because I know that I want well actually I can just paint the adjustment on first. So I'm going to paint left and right here by clicking and holding my mouse key, and then I'm going to go down to there. So now you can see that if I hover over the blue dot, I can see a mask overlay for where I've made the adjustment. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push temperature to the right to warm up that area, making it a bit yellower to match the other bright sections of the image. And then I'm going to increase my exposure gradually here. Okay, I think that's about enough exposure to bring up the brightness, the exposure in that area. I'll play with contrast next to see if there's anything in there that's useful. And I actually think that bringing up the contrast gives it a nice feel, particularly down here where you can see it really brings out the edges down here when I adjust the contrast, I think. Okay, next up in that area, I don't think we have to worry about highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks because it looks properly exposed to me. I don't think clarity, dehazing, or saturation are required for adjustment because, again, I think it fits well with the overall image just the way it is. Sharpness, noise, moire, to me, all look good. At this point, I think we've done our job of brightening this image in that area so that it has a little bit more dimension as it moves down lower in the image. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to give you 5 seconds to pause the video yourself. I want you to make this exact same adjustment. So now is your time to do that. Congratulations, now you painted on your first adjustment. Remember, you can paint on any of the adjustments we went over, and we went over all of them, so please feel free to express your creativity through using the brush tool. One thing before we go, if you don't like some of your adjustment, you can always erase it. Click on the eraser, and then all you do, you can see that there's a minus sign. I can just put the minus sign, click and drag over areas that I want to erase. And you can see that now it's got a little bit more of a subtle feel to it. I can decrease the flow and density if I want to and sort of feather it in a little bit here. Looks nice. So that's even more of a subtle look and feel to the adjustment we just made. I hope that helps you understand how to use both the brush and the eraser tool. Stay with me because up next we're talking a linear gradient and I think it's going to be cool. Join me for that.